Why narcissists are helpless when faced with an empath. What happens when a person who lives behind a mask meets someone who can see right through it? What happens when someone who thrives on manipulation, deceit, and ego comes face to face with a soul who feels everything, deeply, intuitively, even painfully? That's what we're going to explore today. Why narcissists are helpless when faced with an empath. On the surface, it might seem like the narcissist has all the power. They're charming, calculated, and appear to be in control of everything, especially in a relationship. The empath, in contrast, is open, deeply sensitive, giving, and often self-sacrificing. You'd assume the empath is the one who suffers most. But that's only part of the story. Because underneath all the manipulation and mind games, narcissists carry one fundamental weakness. They cannot survive in the presence of emotional truth. And empaths radiate emotional truth like a lighthouse in the dark. Narcissists may try to exploit the empath at first. They may even succeed for a while. But in the long run, the empath becomes a one person they can't control, can't manipulate, and can't forget. Why? Because the empath doesn't just see the narcissist's charm. They see the wound behind it. They see the pain, the fear, the emptiness, everything the narcissist spends a lifetime hiding. And that kind of deep recognition makes the narcissist feel naked, exposed, vulnerable, helpless. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the psychology behind this unique and often misunderstood dynamic between narcissists and empaths. We'll explore the emotional, neurological, and behavioral patterns that explain why narcissists eventually find themselves disarmed, destabilized, and defeated by the very person they once thought they could use. This is not just about understanding narcissists. It's about understanding you, especially if you're an empath who's ever felt confused, used, or hurt by a narcissistic relationship. So stay with me until the end, because this isn't just information. This is transformation. The more you understand, the more power you reclaim. And by the time this video ends, you'll know exactly why narcissists can't truly handle the energy of someone who feels everything. Let's begin. To understand why narcissists feel helpless around empaths, we first need to understand both personality types. Not just in general, but from a deeply psychological and emotional lens. Let's begin with the narcissist. Narcissists aren't just arrogant people who love themselves too much. In fact, most of them don't truly love themselves at all. What they actually have is a false self, a carefully constructed persona they've built to survive emotional wounds from childhood. Psychologists believe narcissism often begins as a survival mechanism. Somewhere in early development, the child who will become a narcissist learns that love is conditional, attention is earned through performance, and vulnerability is dangerous. So they armor up. They create an external identity that is charming, successful, impressive, and above reproach. But underneath that identity is a fragile ego, intense shame, and a constant fear of being found out or abandoned. That's why narcissists obsess over validation. That's why they manipulate, lie, deflect, and control. They are not grounded in their own inner worth. They survive by getting others to reflect an image of power back to them. Now enter the empath. An empath is not just someone who is sensitive. Empaths are neurologically wired to feel what others feel. They absorb emotional frequencies like a sponge. They can pick up on subtle shifts in mood, energy, tone, and intention, even when nothing has been said out loud. Empaths feel with others. They grieve with others. They intuitively understand emotional wounds that haven't even been spoken yet, and they often carry a deep, internal drive to heal pain wherever they find it. On the surface, the narcissist sees the empath as the perfect target. Here's someone kind, giving, forgiving, open, and emotionally rich. Here's someone who will listen to their stories, accept their flaws, and shower them with attention. It's ideal for a while. But very quickly, a strange thing happens. The narcissist starts to realize they can't fully control the empath. The usual tools, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, triangulation, devaluation, they don't quite work the way they're supposed to. Why? Because the empath feels a lie. Even if they can't explain it logically, even if they try to deny it at first, the empath always senses when something is off. Their nervous system alerts them before their brain catches up. They know when love isn't love. They know when manipulation is being masked as affection. And that is terrifying to the narcissist. Narcissists surround themselves with people who confirm their version of reality. But the empath, by nature, doesn't lie to themselves for long. They're too emotionally honest. And over time, that honesty shines a light on the narcissist's darkness. This is where the helplessness begins. Because while narcissists are used to being emotionally one step ahead, creating confusion, rewriting the narrative, staying in control, the empath slowly, quietly begins to see through it all. They might not leave right away. Many empaths stay far longer than they should. But that's the other reason narcissists are helpless around them. Empaths heal themselves. The narcissists expect the empath to break. But the empath begins to awaken. They go to therapy. They read. They journal. They meditate. They start asking hard questions. They reconnect with their intuition. And this internal work terrifies a narcissist because it means the empath is now reclaiming their power. The fog lifts. The guilt dissolves. The old emotional hooks don't work anymore. Suddenly, the empath is not crying. They're calm. They're not confused. They're clear. They're not chasing. They're silent. And the narcissist, for all their bravado, they don't know what to do. Because the narcissist's entire system is based on feeding off emotional chaos. But the empath has returned to their center. They remembered who they are. And that peace, that clarity, that boundary, it paralyzes a narcissist. Now, let's go deeper into why, psychologically, this happens. Empaths reflect emotional truth. Narcissists rely on emotional illusion. When the two meet, one of two things will happen. Either the empath will suppress their truth to stay in illusion, or they'll awaken and force the illusion to collapse. If the empath awakens, the narcissist begins to feel seen, not adored, not feared, not admired, but truly seen. And being seen is the one thing the narcissist can't tolerate. Being seen means they can no longer hide behind charm. Being seen means the game is over. Being seen means they have confronted the one thing they've avoided their whole life, themselves. This is the moment where the narcissist starts to self-destruct. They might lash out. They might discard the empath. They might smear them. But none of it is power, it's panic. Because once an empath wakes up, they're not just healed. They become dangerous to the narcissist's fantasy. They know the truth. They've lived through the lie. And they've survived it. And that survival is what makes them untouchable. Let's now go further into the psychological war that unfolds when a narcissist faces a fully awakened empath. One who no longer questions their own perception. One who no longer believes that love should hurt. And one who begins to reclaim their emotional territory. The empath, by nature, gives people the benefit of the doubt. They see beyond behavior. They feel the wounds behind the words. And this is what originally makes them so attractive to the narcissist. Empaths are emotionally forgiving, even when they're being hurt. They believe everyone has a story. Everyone deserves healing. Everyone is good inside of them. But here's where the narcissist fails to see the full picture. Because underneath that compassion lies something they underestimate: resilience. Narcissists assume that because an empath absorbs pain, they must be weak. That their tears are signs of fragility. That their forgiveness is naivety. That their softness means submission. But they're wrong. What they fail to realize is that empaths don't break easily. They bend. They bend to the point of exhaustion. They stretch themselves thin trying to understand, trying to fix, trying to give. But eventually, they bounce back. And when they do, they come back stronger, quieter, wiser, less reactive, more dangerous to the narcissist's game than ever before. Because something changes in the empath the moment they realize they're not the broken one. Let's examine this transformation. At first, the empath blames themselves. They internalize the narcissist's projections. You're too sensitive. You overthink everything. You're the reason I get angry. You can't let anything go. You're the one who needs help. The empath takes this in. They feel shame. They cry. They doubt their worth. They question their memory. They lose sleep trying to figure out what went wrong. And in this state, the narcissist thrives because confusion is the narc's playground. But here's the turning point. The empath starts to notice patterns. They talk to someone, a therapist, a friend, an online community. They read something that mirrors their exact experience. They begin to realize, this isn't just a difficult relationship. This is emotional abuse. And suddenly, the pieces click. Now, what once felt like love feels like control. What once felt like passion feels like manipulation. What once felt like forgiveness now feels like enabling. And that realization? It's irreversible. Once the empath sees a narcissist's behavior for what it is, there's no unseeing it. There's no going back. And this is when the balance of power shifts. The narcissist, sensing the change, often doubles down. They may become more controlling, more dramatic, or more seductive. They may even feign vulnerability or mimic growth. I know I've hurt you. I'm going to change. You're the only one who sees the real me. But the empath's eyes are open now. And open eyes don't fall for illusions. It's here that the narcissist's helplessness becomes obvious. They throw every trick they have at the empath. Love bombing again, playing the victim, creating jealousy, sudden withdrawal, reinforced guilt. But none of it works, because the empath has returned to themselves. They're anchored in their truth now. They found their emotional North Star again. And the narcissist, who once feasted on that light, finds himself starving in its absence. Let's pause to acknowledge something important. This process of awakening is not easy for the empath. There are moments of relapse, moments of doubt, nights spent grieving the illusion, mourning the version of the narcissist they once believed in, and most painfully, mourning the version of themselves they lost in the process. But every tear shed is a clearing. Every step away is an act of power. Every boundary enforced is a return to emotional integrity. And eventually, the empath no longer needs a narcissist to acknowledge the harm. They no longer wait for an apology. They no longer need closure, because they understand something the narcissist never will. Closure is an inside job. And with that realization, the empath does something radical, something that makes the narcissist feel truly helpless. They go no contact, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of peace. That silence, that absence, that complete disengagement, it's the sound of an empath becoming sovereign again. Now, let's talk about what this does to the narcissist psychologically. You see, narcissists aren't just uncomfortable with silence. They're terrified of it. Silence means they no longer matter. Silence means they're no longer in control. Silence means their narrative is no longer being validated. And when an empath, especially one who was once deeply bonded, goes silent, it's not just rejection. It's annihilation. To the narcissist, losing access to the empath is like losing access to their favorite mirror. They can't see themselves anymore. And worse, they begin to suspect that the reflection the empath once gave them wasn't admiration, but pity. And pity is the one thing a narcissist cannot stand. So what do? They panic. They hoover. They stalk silently. They try to replace the empath. Quickly, sloppily, loudly. They post pictures. They show off. They fabricate stories of happiness. But it never works. Because empaths are not replaceable. Their emotional depth cannot be mimicked. Their intuitive presence cannot be duplicated. And their truth, it leaves a mark on the narcissist's soul that no amount of distraction can erase. Over time, the narcissist's mask begins to crack. Their supply runs dry. And what's left is the very thing they feared all along. The emptiness they tried to fill with someone else's light. Meanwhile, the empath, they're rebuilding. They're learning boundaries. They're falling in love with themselves again. They're healing not just from a relationship, but from the idea that love requires suffering. And that is why narcissists are helpless when faced with an empath. Because the empath doesn't just survive them. The empath transcends them. If you are an empath who has been hurt by a narcissist, hear this. Your pain was real. Your confusion was valid. Your kindness was never a problem. But now, your clarity is your power. Your sensitivity is your gift. Your compassion is your superpower. And that superpower is the one thing the narcissist can't replicate, can't control, and can't extinguish. You were never weak for feeling. You were never naive for hoping. You were never broken for staying too long. You were loving. You were honest. You were human. And now that you remembered who you are, You are unstoppable. Let the narcissist fade into the background of your life like static on an old radio. Let their noise become irrelevant. Let their helplessness stay where it belongs, in their own unhealed hands. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to fight them. You don't even need to forgive them today. You just need to keep walking. Because every step you take away from manipulation, from gaslighting, from emotional warfare, is a step back into your own light. And that, my friend, is why narcissists are truly helpless when faced with an empath. Thank you for listening. If this voiceover has helped you feel seen or understood, please share, and subscribe to this channel. Your journey matters. Your healing is sacred. And your peace? It's your birthright. Until next time, stay grounded, stay compassionate, and stay free.